Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. 2024 was an absolute breakthrough year for me. I'd been struggling with porn addiction for years and years and years, and eventually, at the end of 2023, I got help from a woman called Mary Paulus. She taught me the Beyond Compulsion method, and essentially what I did is I started to take a very proactive approach to change my neural pathways correctly by understanding more about the addictive part of my mind and using a script to think through urges in the right way. Now, what I'll talk about in this video is 5 things which I used to do which really didn't actually help me overcome this addiction, and then 5 things to do instead. So what I'll do is I'll start off then with number 1, and we'll just talk through these different things which you're probably doing at the minute and you're probably intending to overcome porn addiction, but these things that you're doing are actually just making things worse. And hopefully this video can help you understand why things haven't actually fallen into place just yet. So first of all, remove blockers. That's tip number 1. And I know this goes against the grain. It's probably different to what everyone else is talking about. But the truth is, you can always watch porn. Like, porn's on your phone, it's on social media, it's everywhere nowadays. So you always have that choice to watch porn. If you try and, use these blockers, you're basically trying to artificially take away your own choice, which leads to feeling completely disempowered. And it's just an ineffective way of living. We've worked with clients now who have had these blockers in place for years and years, and no matter what, they've always managed to get around those blockers. And actually having those blockers can almost create this game where it's like, how do I access porn without going on the porn site that I'm blocked from? And I used to play that game myself, led to me basically just strengthening addictive neural pathways, and it really, really destroyed me essentially, because I ended up looking at the most sexual content I could possibly find on social media instead of just going straight to a porn site, which I could have just done, and things probably would have actually been a lot better for me if I hadn't have put these blockers in place. So yeah, get rid of the blockers. They're so disempowering and they're not helping you actually move in the right direction, which is all about changing your thought patterns and what's going on in the mind instead of what's going on like on your phone and like the external. We want to change the internal to change the external instead of trying to change the external to change the internal. Tip number 2, remove any screen limits. A little bit like the last tip, but essentially what we want to be doing is focusing on what we're choosing to do instead of choosing what not to do. I actually had a message from my girlfriend this morning, and she replied to me at like 7 a.m. I think I'd messaged her about 5:30, and she was like, "Hey, morning, I'm trying not to go on my phone too much." And I said to her right away, like, "I'm so sorry for being all coachy on you, but I think it's really useful, at least it was for me, to like shift my thinking from what am I not doing to what am I doing." So if you've got like screen limits in place, you're going to feel deprived again, these feelings that you can't do something, and that's just going to piss you off. And then you're going to end up wanting to get out of those feelings, so you'll set like a screen limit, like, only go on, I don't know, some app for 15 minutes a day. You get to the 15th minute and it comes up with a message and it's like, you got to get off this app or whatever. And then you're just like, nah, I don't want to do that. And then you choose to go ahead and stay on the app anyway. It's like, it's just going to reinforce addictive neural pathways. It's not actually going to get you to where you want to be. And so we've got to continue focusing on what we actually do instead of what we don't do. So you've always got a choice, moment by moment, what you do with your actions, to start to choose to do things instead of trying to focus on not doing things. All right. Tip number 3, let go of any conditional habits. I used to have so many conditional no-fap habits, as I'll call them now. Used to meditate like every day, and I was trying to do an hour every day, and I honestly had the belief, this self-limiting belief, a junky thought, so an excuse, rationalization to engage in this compulsive behavior, that if I don't meditate for an hour, I'm going to end up relapsing. Like, I'll go back to porn if I don't meditate for an hour. I also had many other thoughts like, I need to journal every day, I need to work out, I need to get the right amount of sleep, I need to have my cold shower, I need to, avoid my phone. I'd be putting my phone in the locker at work or leaving it in a cupboard and things like that. And I'd have all these conditional habits where it really felt like if I don't do this, then that's going to result in me watching porn. This is so disempowering again. It's so detrimental, and it's just not the reality of your situation. Like, You may want to watch porn more if you don't do certain things, or you may want to watch porn more if you do certain things. But once you know how to deal with that wanting, it doesn't really matter, and you're just a free person to do whatever you want to do based on the consequences, knowing that certain actions may lead to more desire, certain actions may lead to less desire, but that's not the real problem. The problem is dealing with that desire. Hopefully that helps. Tip number 4, stop consuming no-fap content and deal with your urges instead. So just continuing on from that last point, when you're consuming no-fap content all the time, you're kind of focusing on not doing stuff, or you're focusing on self-improvement or distraction or avoidance, but you're never actually dealing with the real problem, which is the inability to deal with compulsive desire. When you understand the addicted part of your mind and you know how to deal with urges, then you're not going to be wanting to watch any no-fap content, because you'll realize it's all just complete pointless bullshit, procrastination, which only actually makes the problem even worse, because motivation is very temporary. You can go into a community, talk about your problems, get all motivated and excited for this big change, and then a few weeks go by and you have this inevitable moment of compulsive desire. You're feeling absolutely terrible. Maybe something's happened at work or whatever, and you go, fuck it, and you choose to engage with the porn once again. So the content around like nofap, 99% of it isn't actually going to help you. Instead, if you deal with urges, then you don't really need to think about this problem outside of dealing with the urges. Tip number 5, eliminate streaks. Oh my goodness. Streaks really kind of destroyed my mental health. I managed to get to the 90 days, got that big badge, that medal of honor of hitting the 90 days many times, but then what would happen is I'd always go back to the porn and I'd crash down and feel so awful. I'd binge, I'd edge, and my self-esteem would erode straight away. So a few sort of thought patterns which we've seen clients have over the last 12 months or so are things like, I'll surely fail after 3 weeks again, future thinking. You always struggle and relapse at the 2-week and 3-week point. It's going to come back eventually, and there'll be a moment when you're not ready for it. That's that compulsive desire. It does always come back, and you will be ready for it if you understand the addictive part of your mind and you know how to deal with urges. This is not really going to be temporary discomfort. This will last forever. Again, thinking that this compulsive desire is going to be there forever. It's not if you learn how to change it. I would not be able to sustain not watching porn. You could have been clean for X number of months by now. So another couple ones actually there, 2 separate ones there. But yeah, the first one was, I would not be able to sustain not watching porn. So again, just future thinking, kind of counting streaks, like, oh, maybe I'm on like day 10 and I've never got past day 11 before. Oh, am I going to fail? All that helpless thinking by the addicted part of the mind. Or thoughts like, past thoughts as well, like you could have been clean for this number of months by now if you hadn't have engaged, which is just classic self-deprecation from the addicted part of the mind. So you want to get out of this this streak thinking. Progress isn't made by going on a streak. You stay in the addiction until you next relapse. That's all you're doing on a streak. And the alternative to that is, if you think through urges in the right way and you deal with the addicted part of the mind correctly, you can make so much progress very quickly. So if I was to read my script one time and really connect to each of the facts, think through that choice in a moment of compulsive desire, I would actually rewire my brain more than doing 90 days of nofap through just avoidance, substitution and distraction. That's my opinion on it. I've lived both sides, so take what you will from that opinion. Step number 6, write down all compulsive behaviours. Most people with a porn addiction have more than one compulsive behaviour. It's probably going to go alongside things like social media, maybe eating a lot of junk food and eating too much food in particular, and maybe video games, or it could be like smoking, maybe even taking drugs, things like that. There's probably going to be more than one compulsive behaviour, and what people can do is they can go, right, I want to stop porn, and they switch into a different compulsive behaviour, start doing this other thing loads. So I think it's really important to become aware of all compulsive behaviours, and then if you tackle all of them, you can overcome all of them, and you're going to feel just so much better for it, and that's what I want for you. So write down all of them, and then write down how being out of control is impacting you. As I say, doing the nofap streaks and then eventually relapsing is not, you're not in control of yourself. If you're in that position right now, I was in that for like 9 years, had this illusion of control because I would make progress as such. I thought it was progress when I was doing the streaks, but really you're still out of control. So facing that reality is really difficult. When I first started working with Mary, I had so much resistance. I did not want to believe what she was telling me. She was like, Tom, you relapsed a few weeks ago. You are in an addiction. And I did not want to believe it. I was like, well, I've just done like 90 days of nofap, like before I relapsed. Like, surely I've made progress here. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't need your help. That was kind of my approach at first. And then I actually started to face the reality and accepted some external help and got the help I needed. And I think just facing that reality and admitting, like, you know what, this is actually really impacting my confidence, or it's really impacting my self-esteem or my relationships or my connection to people. Facing that reality is hard. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's one of the best things you can possibly do for yourself. If you're willing to experience that discomfort, face it, write down how this is actually impacting you, your chances of success are going to multiply 100%. Because when you're in the addiction, what happens is the addicted part of your mind's trying to do everything it can to get you to avoid that reality. So you're going to have all this minimizing going on. So we've got to start trying to face that reality. It's going to really, really help you. Tip number 8, write out all your excuses. So I used to have so many excuses to engage in this compulsive behaviour. These are what we call junkie thoughts. Any excuse, rationalisation, justification to engage in your compulsive behaviour. So here's a few examples of some common ones that we see in our program. Things like, I need to release, I'm too tired, your body needs it once in a while, it's automatic, never ever masturbating can't be healthy, porn will help me sleep, one peak won't hurt, oh, I'll just do it once and then I'll focus on not doing it again. Write down all those excuses. I had so many, as I say. And the thing is, when you start to actually bring these thoughts into a greater sense of awareness by like writing them down, it's like you're dealing with the addicted part of your mind, which is the key to actually going beyond this for good. So we've got to start dealing with the addicted part of the mind correctly, standing up for ourselves, because otherwise we're just going to get absolutely bullied, be helpless, and continue in this addiction indefinitely. Write down all your excuses. It will help you. Tip number 9, learn how the addicted part of the mind works. I had never been taught about the addicted part of my mind. I wasn't aware of all the junky thoughts that I had. I wasn't aware of how unanswerable questions work. And as such, I would continue engaging, looking at porn, and be so confused afterwards. Like, what is going on here? Like, I've been trying so hard not to watch porn. I want this so bad. I really, really don't want to watch porn. But that in itself, that thought you just heard there, I really, really don't want to watch porn. Interesting thing about that is, when you have an urge, you do really, really want to watch porn. And so both things are true, which causes this constant conflict. It's part of how addiction works. You really, really want it when you're in those urges, and then you really, really don't want it when you're out of those urges. And so it's this cognitive dissonance, which basically destroys people's mental health, to tell you the truth. And we got to start by understanding all of this in a lot more detail, more thoroughly, and then be equipped to deal with it. Without that education, chances are you're going to continue engaging and wonder what on earth is going on. And then tip number 10, build an unchanging system. What I see a lot is people trying to overcome this problem, but every time they relapse, their system changes. So they relapse, oh, I need to learn something from this, I need to maybe meditate more, I need to work out more, oh, I need to avoid these triggers more, whatever it is. And so they change their system slightly. And so then the next time they relapse, they go, oh, well, you know, there's something wrong with my system. I need to change this, I need to change that, I need to change this, I need to change that. And every single time they relapse, they're creating this illusion of self-control, of like, I'm not going to do this again in the future because I just need to make this little tweak here. When if your system was working correctly, you wouldn't be relapsing. Like, you're only out of addiction once you stop relapsing. That's when you're out of it. If you're still relapsing, you're in the addiction. That was probably the biggest thing I learned last year from Mary Paulus, is like the reality of addiction is that when you engage once, you want to engage again. So what you really need is a system that just stays the same. Like, if I was to engage with this behavior, which I just wouldn't. But if I was, nothing would change. Like, my system would be identical to what it is today. So hopefully all of that helps. Thanks so much for watching or listening. There's going to be a porn addiction quiz in the description, so go check that out if you want to learn a little bit more about whether you actually are addicted to this or not. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.